it completely dislocated me. I just lost the sense of even having a body. I was just completely dissociated at that point. I completely spaced out. It was almost like there was no me left. It was just the room. And it was just like eyes were just like floating. And it was just like there was no me in this picture at all. That is just horror. I didn't feel like I slightly didn't exist. It's like, no, in that moment, I did not exist. I really didn't like feel like I didn't exist. I was literally in a spiritual community who said, and I was constantly being reinforced that I couldn't get out of this and that this was the goal. That was one of the most terrifying intrusive thoughts was I can't get out of this, that I'm reaching enlightenment and I'm never going to come back.
Hey everyone, I'm Sean O'Connor, author of the Depersonalization Manual, and today I'm speaking with David McDonald, 26 years old, originally from Ireland and now living in Prague in the Czech Republic, where he is training and practicing in coherence therapy. David's experience with depersonalization derealization disorder began with no clear and obvious trigger, yet bringing on a deeply unsettling shift in his perception. His symptoms included having no sense of any agency or free will, extremely obsessive philosophical intrusive thoughts, intense visual snow, tinnitus, and bright vision. David's DPDR lasted for over a year. Throughout that time, he searched for the answers and tools to help him recover and found that the videos and interviews here on the channel played a crucial role in his recovery. He recently wrote to me and said, quote, "I've completely recovered from DPDR. Your videos and especially the interviews were absolutely crucial in my recovery and the advice is excellent. I'm currently studying and practicing as a coherence therapist, so when I say that, I really mean you're doing a great job," end quote. And today, David is here to share his journey through DPDR, the insights and tools that helped him recover, and what life feels like now that he's fully back to normal. David, you're very welcome to the channel. Thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, Sean, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. David, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm 26 years old. I'm originally from Ireland. And about 3 months ago now, I moved to Prague. Completely fell in love with the city, specifically the underground rave scene. I won't get too much into that. I fell in love with the culture and everything over here. My background is not only in coherence therapy, but I'm a qualified secondary school teacher as well. So I have actually only doing that for 1 year before I decided I wanted to also pursue therapy. But you can combine both of them in schools, so that's nice. And I also used to be a sprinter, so I'm used to be an athlete. I actually ran for Ireland a few times, but was plagued by injuries and hamstring tears and all sorts of issues. So yeah, there's quite an interesting past there for sure. But right now I'm living my best life in Prague. I just wanted to try something new, and I've been in Wexford for my whole life, so I've been playing safe a lot. And secondary school teaching is a very safe job, and you get your holidays and your pension, and I have that personality where I like to be safe, so I'm challenging myself, just putting myself in a European country. I don't speak the language, and I have to make new friends just to really push myself. And then what they call the coherence therapy, I can do it online with people. So I have a lot of freedom there. I have a YouTube channel with just my name, TikTok. So I'm just really putting myself out there, trying new things, and yeah, just enjoying life while I'm young, challenging myself really.
With that said, David, can you tell us a little bit about your experience with DPDR and what stage of life were you at? When did it start for you and how was it?
Yeah, so it's been about 1.3, 1.4 year ago now. Last year. So my story is a bit nuts. It's a bit wild. So I also used to be a meditation teacher, which is how I kind of transitioned into the coherence therapy, because I was already a meditation mindfulness teacher. I worked for Healthy Gamer, which is like a huge mental health company on YouTube. I think they have currently about 3 million subscribers. So I used to work for them, for Dr. K. He's actually a Buddhist monk, and he's a Harvard psychiatrist. So that was my pathway in. And I started to get really, really deep into Buddhism. really, really deep into meditation. And I would like go to retreats and I would sit for like almost 8 hours a day meditating. Um, and then do quite advanced meditation techniques as well, where I would literally aim to deconstruct the mind and deconstruct the self. And I feel like that wasn't good to go so deep into it. It's kind of like psychedelics. Meditation can actually produce similar results if you take it to the extreme. Anything taken to the extreme, right? And I really think I took it to the extreme and went just so deep into it. I believe that had something to do with what triggered this, but I'm still not 100% sure. But I think it could have just taken meditation to such an extreme. So yeah, I was in Cork, in Ireland, with my friend, during a weekend, and everything was normal. Except the days prior, my visual field was bright. First, it was much brighter for some reason, and I didn't understand why. I was like, oh, side effect of meditation, or this is kind of cool. But everything just seemed kind of brighter for some reason, and it was kind of odd. Um, and then I was just in Cork, and I was kind of getting waves of anxiety that I've never ever, for no reason. My anxiety would always be for a reason in my life. It would always have a clear, specific trigger, but this was for no reason. Um, I was just like concerned for my own safety. I was feeling in danger, like almost like my health was endangered or something was wrong. Something was coming. Something was like just something was not right. And it went in waves. And I went out that night. I had a great night actually. And then I drove back to Wexford. And the following day, everything flipped. I just was overcome with the most terrifying existential fear. That I can't even put it into words. I was just absolutely petrified. Um, Everything kind of began to drain. It's almost like everything just became very gray. Um, and at this point my vision was super bright. Like everything felt very intense when I was looking out at it. And I remember walking. I live in the countryside, walking in the fields, trying to like do mindfulness and do like the coherence therapy and try to calm this down because I was like, oh, there's something like traumatic happening, or it's just like a little bit here to like deal with or something. But none of that was actually working. Um, this thing was just a beast. It was just I can't even describe. You probably know what I'm talking about, but this kind of fear is like a whole other level. Um, and then I remember that evening, it went to wave and then it went down again. And this has actually been a pattern. This is what it's been like for me. It's wave like. And then I felt fine that evening, and then I woke up the next morning, and I was just the best way I can describe it is just spaced out. I was just completely spaced out of it. Um, Everything was grey. Um, Vision was bright. Um, I felt nothing some of the times. I felt absolutely nothing. I was profoundly confused, didn't know what was happening. Um, but yeah, I think I'll stop there because that's just the initial. That was your question. That was just how it started. But that was the initial phase of it, I guess.
Yeah, it is. It is such an overwhelming experience, and I was talking to someone about this the other day, just like that. If you're trying to describe it to somebody who hasn't been through it, you can convey some of it, and so some of the language to some of the symptoms justice, but when it first happens, and especially when it first happens and you don't know what this is, and it hits you like a tidal wave, like it's so, it feels so destabilizing as well. It's just like the basic kind of like building blocks of things, everything you had taken for granted are now just like sliding away from you. You're kind of going up, and you don't know why it's happening. And I mean, yeah, being hit with existential dread, um, and not in the context of, I mean, certainly with psychedelics, or I mean, I would have like dabbled with like long form meditation as well over the years, like done retreats and stuff. And I don't think not as near as seriously as you have, David. Like, but you'd recognize some of the kind of those. You're almost kind of like glancing off those moments of kind of intense existential awareness, but you can pull back from them. You're using these techniques to explore them at your own speed. And then this happens, and it's just like the anvil lands on top of you, and and I mean, I've said this before. It's for me, it was like a rug had been pulled out from under me that I didn't even know was there, and now I was lying on the ground, and nobody could help me. I couldn't help me. I couldn't even describe what was wrong, but I also couldn't do anything. I wasn't able to function. Um, that's such a good way to describe it. What you said, David, it's a beast. Like it's fear. It's fear on a whole other level. It's almost like it's like you know it's like Lovecraftian fear. It's like like existential horror, but it's happening to you. And also the world is going on around you as if nothing's wrong. And you're going like, but like everything has fallen apart. Um, but that's so interesting that you taught meditation as well, David, and that you studied Buddhism. Um, and just as a quick aside, so the healthy gamer, I'm not familiar with it. Is this it's a mental health channel? Is it specifically about meditation?
No, it's healthy gamer. Dr. Katie mainly works with so gamers, so young men usually, so gamers online, because mental health with the in the gaming community can be quite low sometimes. The mental health struggles can be quite serious, and so he mainly focuses on young men. And the channel has just exploded in like 4 years to 3 million subscribers, and it's a whole company now, it's a whole business. But not just meditation. It's just because he had a background in as a Buddhist monk. But it focused on everything. He's a psychiatrist, so relationship problems. He actually has a 3 hour lecture on dissociation as well, which is interesting, which I really, really enjoyed looking at from a psychiatrist's perspective, which is an interesting video. But everything like dating, anxiety, depression, talks about medication. But yeah, literally everything. It's quite interesting.
Wow, that's fantastic. And what were you doing with them?
So I was their meditation leader and teacher. So we would separate into Discord, and we have a huge community of I think now it's over 200,000 people on Discord. So I was the meditation leader for Healthy Gamer. So each week, 2 or 3 times a week, I would um basically have classes of like 150 to 200 people, teaching them meditation, because my degree is in religious studies as well. So I was teaching meditation 2 or 3 times a week to hundreds and hundreds of people, which was for 3 years, which was a crazy experience, to be honest. Which was, yeah, it looks good on the CV, that's for sure.
There's no room left on your CV, man. It's the amount of stuff you've listed out is absolutely amazing.
Interested in everything. Jack of all trades, eh?
Yeah, but I guess but you can also take like even if you're moving into something that can feel quite different, you're also taking all of the benefits and the experiences you've had from one job, not one job, one vocation into another.
It all rolls together. Like the mindfulness, mindfulness is being brought to therapy now, anyways, as an actual evidence-based practice, like mindfulness-based stress reduction, and so it's all converging together into kind of one thing, anyway. So I've always felt like I was doing the same thing, just helping people. That's it. So yeah, I think it's all very much the same.
Yeah, that's great, man. So can you tell us a bit more, David, so you tell us about the first couple of days with it. Um, what was it like after that? Did you just try to stay working? Did you try to kind of readjust? Did you start frantically researching it? What was that like for you?
Um, so those first couple of days, I am so lucky, so lucky, and I even nearly tear up thinking about this. I had a friend who I actually met through the meditation stuff, but he lived in California. He's a doctor. He's a pathologist. Who's he's extremely intelligent. He's very grounded. He's very in tune with emotions. He knows a lot about therapy. He's gone to therapy for his whole life. He's like 44 years old now. And I remember just ringing him because he seemed like that stable base that I needed to talk to, because he seems like he has the answer to everything. And I picked up the phone and I said, yeah, this is happening to me, and I think I'm having some sort of like spiritual insight. Um, and he said, oh no, I've been through that. I've been through that for like 2 years. It's like, that's completely normal. And that, just let it pass, man. It's like, yeah, I listed out every symptom, and he's like, yeah, 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 yeah. No, I'm not, nothing you're telling me right now is worrying me or concerning me. It's like, I've been through all that. And I was like, oh my God. It was like the relief of hearing that. And he just, I really kept him close over like a period of like 6 months of talking to him, texting him, and just having him say that, and having him mention the word like dissociation and depersonalization, really helped me, okay, from like the second week, realize exactly what it was. So I wasn't in the, I knew exactly from week two exactly what it was. And then discovered your channel then, and discovered all the interviews, and it really went from there. But yeah, the days after were just even still awful, even even having him there. I was frantically researching online. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know, should I go to therapy? What kind of therapy should I go to for this? Um, and then the crazy existential intrusive thoughts started happening, and just weird symptoms started happening. Like the visual snow, and I was starting getting tinnitus. Um, more and more waves of like existential fear from absolutely nowhere. That was a few weeks afterwards, and I was just really trying everything. I was like just trying to find some sort of a technique that would make it go away. Like I would go for drives, and then I would actually feel better for like an hour or two. And I was like, oh, thank God that's over. But then it would just come, another wave would come the next day, and then it would go again. And then another wave. And this has been the theme. It's wave, like it comes, for me, it comes in waves. It's never like 24/7 panic attacks, DPDR all the time, 100% intensity for like 1 year. That was never like that for me. It always went like this. And the waves would always come and they would go. Um, and some of those waves were truly awful in those days afterwards. Like I remember being in my dad's house, and I was just like totally spaced out of it. I had like no sense of self at all. My arms were moving by themselves, and I was freaking out because of it. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll put on Top Gun Maverick. This will like, maybe this will. And you know what, the music, and I was like, okay, but I was also like, I can't really feel anything when I'm watching this. It's like, this is one of my favorite movies ever. I remember walking around, I was like doing circles around trying to control the anxiety, but the minute I start try control it, it increased even more. And I guess this is usually one of your questions, but like the worst moment, I mean, when that wave came, it almost like completely dislocated me. Like I felt, it's like I just lost the sense of even having a body. I was just completely dissociated at that point, completely spaced out. It was almost like there was no me left. It was just the room. And it was just like eyes were just like floating. And it was just like there was no me in this picture at all. And that was truly awful. That was just the most, I can't even describe that to you, but like that is just horror. Um, it's not like I didn't feel like I slightly didn't exist. It's like, no, in that moment I did not exist. I really didn't like feel like I didn't exist. And that was just really when it was at its most intense.
Yeah, yeah. um, the thing of like trying to watch something to calm you down as well. I remember, maybe it was like the day, or I think it was the second day that I was like, after I had the panic attack back at home. This was like when I got back from Amsterdam, but I had another panic attack when I got home. And I remember sitting down and trying to watch an episode of Friends. Now, Friends is the most like inoffensive, like there's nothing that's going, to trigger anxiety in Friends. And I was like, absolutely, and I felt like I was in a different dimension. I was like, what the hell is going on, but yeah, I think we do that. We try to kind of find things that calm us down, that we know that we enjoy, and we try to click into that mode. And when we can't do it, it feels absolutely terrifying, because if we can't use the things that we know calm us down and that we know that we enjoy and can rely on, then it leaves you with no purchase. You can't grab onto anything. You can't start anywhere, like, and you're just slipping and sliding down this slope. The thing that's so great, David, that you're able to call your friend in the States and have that discussion with them. Yeah, it's there's I think there will come a day in the near future where anybody who develops depersonalization, derealization, and they will, because it's one of the it's extremely common. It's like 1 in 50 people develop this as a disorder at some point in their lives, but will get to a point where somebody for example, in the south of Ireland, this will hit them, and they'll walk into their GP the next day, and the GP will react like your friend reacted, and they'll go, "Oh yeah, that's called depersonalization. Yeah, it's actually really common. Yeah, that symptom. Yeah, oh yeah, you better believe that symptom too."
Yeah.
And the thing is, and as you said, David, like that doesn't switch it off. It doesn't turn it off in the moment, but it just gives you a path to move forward on, and it gives you it takes the total chaos off your plate, and it allows you to just put a label on it and start moving forward. That forward motion might be glacially slow at first, but at least it's motion. At least you're moving in a direction. So that's amazing that you're able to have that conversation with your friend. The thing of it occurring in waves as well, 100%, 100%. It's a really good way to think of anxiety in general as being it's a spectrum. It changes, it goes up and down. And one of the things that trips us up on the path to recovery is we think of it as a switch. We think the depersonalization, derealization is a switch, and this has been switched on in my brain because of something I did or something I didn't do or some combination of stresses or whatever. So now what I have to do is find the switch to turn it off, right? Maybe it's Top Gun Maverick, because I love that movie. I get lost in that movie. Maybe that's the switch to turn it off. But then you put on Top Gun Maverick and you're going like, did it work? Did it work? Did me watching Friends, did this work? This is a funny episode. Has it worked yet? And what we realize over time is that it's not about trying to find a perfect combination of circumstances or something that's going to switch it off in the moment. It's the constantly checking the switch that is keeping it going. Mm-hmm. But that feels so counterintuitive. And also because at the start, because typically when it happens as well, it sounds like your experience too, David, is that when it tends to happen very quickly. So it'll happen over the course of, I mean, if it's a panic attack, it could be instantly, or a bad drug experience, quite instantly. There can also be a confluence of stresses that build up, but even at that, it could happen over the course of 24 hours, and now you're in an intense state of depersonalization. But that feels like a switch has been flicked. So there's something in my brain that's a circuit that's been fried, or a switch that has been flicked, and I got to find that. So what we expect is that process in reverse. So it'll dissipate, or it'll stop with that same speed. But we trip ourselves up looking for that, because that's not what recovery is.
Yeah, it's looking for the magic switch. And oh God, I tell you, that will keep you going. That will keep you going with DPDR for a long time if you continuously try to find the magic switch. There's a lot to say there, but I think I want to say this earlier on in the video, just in case people, some people don't watch the full interview, but like that wave-like nature is knowing that wave-like nature and understanding that wave-like nature is super important. Because I eventually got to a point, and this comes from a quote, because I know, and luckily I've a lot of friends who are actually therapists who specialize in this. One thing they said, and one thing that I discovered by myself towards the end of it, was I recovered before I recovered. And that might sound a bit stupid, but I recovered completely before my symptoms went away. That might not make any sense, but like I got to a point where I was so accustomed to a panic attack, and I trusted so much, and I just knew that this is just like every other wave and it will pass. And the thing I have to do about this right now is absolutely nothing. And it just got to a point where that just became my default mode. And I was sitting at home and I could feel like, oh, it just comes out of nowhere. It's like, oh, I don't feel real, and I feel anxious, and there's these thoughts going. And before I would like be trying to figure it out, trying to find to switch it off, but I just did absolutely nothing about it. Nothing. I just completely stepped away and did nothing about it. Um, and that was absolutely key. And so then I just kept building this trust over time that when another wave came, just like the 100 times previous, it passed. It always passed. And when I kept doing that over and over and over again, the waves just kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I was like, okay, I see. I see. Okay. I just had this where I call it is just trust. I just knew for 100% certainty now that this was going to pass. And then at that point, I was like, I'm recovered. I still have visuals now. I still have like tinnitus or whatever. I would say that, but I don't care. And I'm still getting waves, but I don't care. I do not care. And there was a moment where I was like, I don't care, I'm done. And yeah, it still kept happening for a couple of months, but then it just faded out in the background completely. But yeah, I love that saying. It's like, I've recovered before I recovered. And that is the attitude that's needed. Is recovery before you actually recover. Recovery before the symptoms go away. I just think it takes a while to get there, and it takes a lot of training to get there. But that was the key for me, I think.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love that. Yeah. I recovered before I recovered 100%. One of the things because what this essentially is a habit of thought, just like any kind of modalities of behavior, but it is essentially a habit of thought. It doesn't feel like that, but habits of thought don't ever feel like habits. They feel like you're in this thing forever. The thing I often compare it to is someone who decides to quit smoking. You decide to quit smoking cigarettes, right? So, and someone says, okay, well, smoking cigarettes is expensive. It's stinking up my apartment. I'm coughing. And my clothes are smelling of smoke. I'm done. I'm finished with this. I'm not doing it anymore. So you quit smoking. You're done. What are you going to be thinking about every day for the next couple of weeks?
Mm-hmm.
Smoking all day, every day. And you have a coffee. God, I love a smoke. Take the dog for a walk. I have to have a smoke, First thing, wake up in the morning. Yeah, God, I always have a smoke, But the fact that you have that urge is not a problem. What becomes a problem is when you react to it by saying, but I quit smoking. Why do I still think this? I quit smoking, And it's like, well, you deciding to quit smoking is a very important milestone, but you now have to allow for the behavioral change to wind down over time. You have to allow for one habit to wind down and the other one, and you fill in the other one. And the way that we do that is by, when the urges happen, to do nothing. Because if you get frustrated with it, that's communicating to your brain that urge is important, and it's giving it a sense of strength. Whereas if you just say, like, okay, I have this urge to smoke a cigarette, and that's also connected to like my own sense of discipline and the fact that I was supposed to have given them up, and I'll be betraying myself and all that. Or just swipe your phone open and play Candy Crush, do something else. But it feels deeply counterintuitive to do that at the start, because how could something so simple be a pushback against something that feels so strong?
Yeah.
But the currency of our brains is focus, of our consciousness. The currency of our consciousness is focus. All your brain cares about is, what are you focusing on? The urge to smoke, like, okay, there's a physicality to it, but it's just words and it's just habit. And when you take your attention and focus away from it, and you just say, I'm done. No, oh no, I'm done. I'm done. I remember I got to a place in my recovery where, like, I had a moment like that too, where I remember saying to myself, like, I'm a person who I love movies, I love traveling, I love music, I love literature, and all I'm doing all day, every day, is thinking about some existential thought about the size of the universe or the nature of my consciousness. That's all I'm doing. That's all I'm doing. And I actually got to a point where I was like, I'm sick of it. Like, I am sick of listening to myself go over this thing over and over and over again. I don't get anywhere with it. There's no big boss to fight. There's no big realization. It's just this conveyor belt, this washing machine of fear that goes over and over again. I wouldn't mind watching The Simpsons. I wouldn't mind reading Lord of the Rings. I wouldn't mind visiting Wexford. You know, I wouldn't mind doing something else. But you just get to a point where you're like, I'm done. I'm done with this. And that perspective shift feels small, but it's actually huge. It's a big part of recovery.
Huge, absolutely huge. And this has a lot to do with as a form of therapy that I just really love and I think is really effective for this. But I think like the best, like CBT and psychodynamic therapy, like I don't think it would really do much here. Maybe that's controversial to say. But there's a particular form of therapy called metacognitive therapy, which is really good, and also a sensory motor OCD approach, which I find very effective. So sensory motor OCD is like I have to keep focusing on this. It's like it's dangerous. I have to keep focusing on it, and sensory motor OCD is all about again redirecting your attention away, and basically any kind of OCD therapy, especially metacognitive therapy, is we have these beliefs around certain sensations or certain thoughts that seem so important or dangerous. And we have certain beliefs that are underneath them that are, well, I can't let this thought go. I have to figure this thought out because if I don't figure it out, then what is it? What is it? Well, there's a belief under there. If I don't figure it out, then, well, I'll never be able to stop thinking about it. That could be one. If I don't figure it out, then it will actually happen. If I don't figure it out, then do. And in metacognitive therapy, they have these beliefs underneath, the need to focus and the need to like pay attention. That's really just helpful to know for people. But I think it's funny because like you're not a therapist yet. You discovered this already. You kind of discovered the correct approach already just by living it. It's really fascinating, right? It's like we discovered like especially people who have lived through this. And it goes back to a saying, it's like you become an expert in your own mental health condition, right? So I think that's true in this case.
Yeah. It's so interesting, and it is something I'm very very conscious of. Is that I'm not a therapist. I'm not. I mean, I'm a filmmaker. You know, but and I'm very conscious of like I don't want to replace like a therapist. I don't want to even claim that I've any ability to speak about like even any other medical condition. But I came across that saying. It's the version I came across was something like you have you have the experience to help the person you used to be.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I thought that's it, because I remember when I was going through this that I mean, what I wouldn't have given to have had that phone call with your buddy. And you
Exactly.
know, yeah,
Exactly.
I would have given the world to just have a resource. And the thing is that this, I don't know if you found this as well, David, but like all the information about DPDR, it's all out there. Like it's actually quite well understood. It's as a transient symptom uh, uh a fight or flight situation, or what's perceived to be a fight or flight situation. These things are extremely common. Um, but the information was so fragmented compared to the information that's out there for, say, agoraphobia or social anxiety disorder, that this is back in 2005 that I kind of had to find that stuff and put it together. But certainly, yeah, and also for you as well, man, going forward with your therapeutic work. I mean, the amount of people, anyone you speak to who is struggling with anxiety in any form, you will have an ability to communicate with them and relate to them, and an ability to help them that is unique to you.
Yeah, it's so relieving to see just to speak with somebody or hear from somebody who actually lived it. I just wouldn't be able to go to a therapist who has not lived DPDR. I just wouldn't be able to because you just don't get it. It says you don't get it. And it's really like I would rather speak to someone like you because you've actually lived it. And yeah, no, I completely 100% agree.
Yeah. You said something lovely as well about about practicing focusing away from this. And I remember discussing this with someone on an interview. I can't remember which one, but we talked about like how mindfulness is actually kind of connected to recovery from DPDR or any anxiety-based condition, because you are being mindful of your thoughts. There's a phrase in meditation that says, if the mind wanders 1,000 times, 1,000 times bringing it back. I think when I started meditating first, my idea was like, oh, it's just chilling out, like, I just begrudge to relax myself, be fine. And no, it's actually, you focus on a candle, or you focus on a sound, or you focus on your breath, or a thought, or whatever it is, but you are training your focus um to be able to retain it onto something, which then kind of has ripple effects out into everything in life. I mean, being able to get into the flow state of reading a book or working, or or even enjoying a conversation or whatever. But there, it is something similar with recovery from an anxiety based condition, because you're using that same mindfulness, that if a thought pops up and says, oh, this is like, you're for me, one of mine was like, oh, you're living in a dream and you can't wake up. And that thought would scare the life out of me. And what I used to do was I would respond to that by getting into an argument with the thought, first of all, then trying to prove to myself that I wasn't, and then researching it to try and give this case against that statement. And then when I was recovering, I would instead be mindful about that thought when it happened, and just say, no, I'm not interacting with this at all. I've other stuff to do. But it's still that core kind of engine of mindfulness. You're just pointing it in a different direction. But it's incredible how it can be useful in both instances.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's the art of training your attention, really. And it's obviously, it's easier said than done. We both know that. But again, the more you live through it, the more experience you get with it, the more the better you get. This practice is literally with everything, right? And it's particularly difficult with the thoughts, because they seem so dangerous. Like, they desperately need to be figured out. Especially the philosophical ones. Like, oh my good God. I actually one day I was having so many of them. I wrote all of the intrusive thoughts down, like the themes of which, and I listed out 25 that I was thinking obsessively about. Like, free will was one of them. Like, the nature of self was another one. Like, the nature of other people was another one. Like, and I listed out 25 of them. And like, I was like, but like, it's funny because I would actually solve one, because I'm very philosophically minded. So I have a great, you know, host of philosophers I like to draw upon that I really trust. And I would actually figure the free will question out and be satisfied with it. And I would get a lot of relief. And then one, and I'd be like, do I have a sense of self? And then I'd figure that out, and then it would move, and I would like, do I then do, and I would keep going around, and I would keep switching. You said this before, it puts on different jackets. But you can never, ever, ever win. It's not winnable. It's just not winnable.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the reason it's not winnable, or one of the reasons it's not winnable, is because that philosophical thought, even though it's wearing the t-shirt of philosophy, it's actually based on anxiety. So it's not based on actual tangible evidence. It's based on anxiety. Like that thought, as compelling as it may seem on its surface, is the mental equivalent of sweating
Yeah.
and heart palpitations and muscle tension. And the mistake that we make is that we bring reason and logic to the table to try and push back against it. And like, you may get some back and forth with it, but like, it's not going to stop the thoughts. Because anxiety isn't based on reason and logic. It's based on an ancient evolutionary response to being chased by a wild animal, and you're not going to win an argument with it. And the thing you said as well, David, about, the urge to figure a thought out, or to figure out, to have an answer to something. It's so, especially when one has like an analytical mindset, or a deep problem solving mindset, which I think a lot of folks with who develop anxiety conditions do have that tendency. I certainly do. But so we have the urge to figure the thought out. And what that says to us is that if we don't, like, I have to figure this out because because if I don't figure this thought out, I'm just deferring it. Like this, I have to deal with this at some point. And also, like, how am I supposed to like go about like teaching a class of kids when I haven't figured out like the nature of consciousness? Like how am I supposed to put one against the other? But the thing is that with habits of thought, again, the currency is focus. Like, you don't have to figure it out. And this is something that I think people kind of get into a confusion with, and I certainly did as well, was that like people say, but I'm only distracting from this thought. How am I supposed to distract from this thought? It's too important.
Mm-hmm.
But the word distraction it's too simplistic. I mean, or at least it has simplistic connotations to it, and it's more about refocusing. And the example I always like to give is, think of having a song stuck in your head. So if you've got a song stuck in your head, and which is essentially the same thing on a micro version of a habit of thought like DPDR or anxiety. But if you've got a song stuck in your head and it's driving you crazy, it's absolutely breaking your heart. Like, you can't get some stupid song over and over and over again. It's there for a couple of days. What do you do to get rid of it? Like, do you have to figure that song out? Do you have to get into the bones of why that song is in your head, of why is it that guitar solo? Is that major to minor change? Is it because you saw the song that someone played live a couple of weeks? Do you have to figure that out? No, you don't. When you focus away and listen to another song, contained within that refocusing is the acceptance of the first thought of the first song. The content of it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Whether that thought is a song that's been wrecking your head, or some scary thought about the nature of consciousness, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is the degree to which you're focusing on it. And we trip ourselves up by thinking, but I have to dismantle this and figure it out. No, you don't. When you do that, you're telling your brain that it is worth dismantling and figuring out, or at least the attempt of it. When you focus your attention away from it, and it feels counterintuitive, but contained within that is the acceptance of that first thought, because you're giving yourself the permission to let it go in the background. Mm-hmm. And my God, man, I did 2 years of doing the wrong thing with that.
Yeah,
because it feels so counterintuitive to respond to what feels like a nuclear bomb going off in your head by simply focusing your attention away.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It just seems so important. It's again those metacognitive beliefs. It's like, and everyone might have a different one, but like, if I don't focus on this, you can even do in coherence therapy. We have this technique called the sentence completion, where we do like, okay, so bring up the thought. Okay, do I have free will? And I figure this out. This seems very dangerous and important. Okay, and I finish off a sentence. If I don't figure this out right now, then, and just fill it. What comes up? What fill in the blank? But if I don't figure this out right now, then I'll never be able to stop thinking about it. So I have to focus on it. Okay, that's my cognitive belief that's underpinning this. Okay, you'll never be able to stop thinking about that. Okay, let's run an experiment for a second. Okay, I want you to bring the thought up. Okay, I have no free will. Oh, that's kind of uncomfortable. And then in the metacognitive session, they to like redirect your attention for a moment and kind of prove, look, that thought actually went away. Oh, it did, once you start thinking about something else. And it's kind of disconfirming that underlying belief that, oh, wait a minute. Okay, so maybe it's not actually true that it'll stay away forever. So now I don't have to continuously focus on this. It's not so important. But yeah, it's basically saying the exact same thing as you are. It's just stripping away the importance because they're just not not important.
That's a brilliant way of thinking about it. Yeah. And what I found was that like so much of the experience of DPDR is we get into the pith of it. We get into the kind of the connectivity between these thoughts. When what we need to do is take a step back and just shift the camera angle on how as you referred to it, like the cognitive underpinnings of it. Like when you change how you think about it and put a different label on it, it doesn't switch it off immediately, but it gives you the space to start moving away from it and taking the power back from it. And really interesting as well, David, that you said that, you worked with therapists who, or do you say you have friends who are therapists who specialize in this? That's so great to hear. Is this something that has been kind of been growing in recent years, that people are seeing more and more of it and have decided to specialize in it?
I think like the people I know, are they went through it themselves. So it's a couple actually, a couple, and they went through it themselves, for years, and they were already therapists at the time. But when they lived through this, then they decided to specialize in it, and they take an approach through sensory motor OCD and an OCD. They're OCD therapists, so sensory motor OCD and OCD, and they're also qualified in MCT, so metacognitive therapy. Um, and yeah, they focus a lot on that, but they mostly focus on, there's this thing online called visual snow syndrome, and there's like a whole there's a whole visual snow community and stuff like that. And so really with me and a lot of people, the visual snow aspect seems to be very intense. And then I kind of convinced myself that I have visual snow syndrome. And according to the visual snow syndrome community, there's no cure for it, and it's under research, and it's terrifying. And there's a whole Reddit for VSS. But then I came across, I met these two beautiful people, who are psychotherapists in visual snow syndrome and OCD, depersonalization, derealization. I was like, whoa, okay. But I was like so encouraged, and they were like, no, we've completely recovered. The VSS community is just basically BS. It's not. It's keeping people stuck. Get off of Reddit. And yeah, they just give really great advice, sensory motor advice. Leave the thought alone. Redirect your attention. Stop giving it power. And the more and more you do that, you'll eventually reach a place where, I remember she said it. She said one time, she said, you're in a good place when you reach that point where you've recovered before you've recovered, and you just don't care anymore. It's like, that is the point where, that is the point right there. And yes, I wasn't technically 100% recovered, but that's what led to it. It's just like, I just stopped caring. So, yeah, I think it's going to get a lot bigger. I think there's actually CBT specifically designed for this that's upcoming in the future, I think, as well. So yeah, really, really, really great things on the horizon, I think.
So encouraging to hear. And like, yeah, and that's the thing as well, is the people who've gone through this, and a lot of the therapists I've come across over the years as well, and some I've interviewed on the channel as well, and like yourself, would have one of the reasons they get into therapy is because they're like, I mean, people need help with this. There just isn't the information out there about this. The VSS thing is so interesting, and it's something that at one point I was convinced I had as well, because I was experiencing. I mean, I had all the visual symptoms, but visual snow was one of them. But when I look at the symptoms of visual snow, and very often the things that tend to trigger them with people, it is very, very difficult to distinguish them from depersonalization. All of the symptoms that tend to happen with VSS are already under the umbrella of depersonalization, derealization, which itself is under the umbrella of anxiety. So it does again. I'm very cautious, because I'm not a medical health professional. I'm always very cautious about making kind of pronouncements about things like that. But it does feel that like it is kind of, it's such a niche thing, as you mentioned, that when people find it, it almost kind of precludes exploring anything else, because you're like, oh, I have this thing, I can't recover. Here's all the proof that I have, and then that becomes a self-reinforcing thing.
Yeah.
Whereas all the evidence, as far as I can see, is that like this is clearly depersonalization disorder. You're just focusing on one of the visual symptoms of it.
Yeah, it's all the same thing. That's the first error. I was like, wait a minute, there's a whole community just for visual snow syndrome. I was like, but wait a minute. And then I started reading the Reddit, and everyone experiencing VSS was also experiencing like, oh yeah, I'm deeper. I don't feel real. I don't feel this. I'm having anxiety. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, why are we separating like like making it as if there's two completely different conditions? That just makes no sense at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make more sense to it's all really falls under the same kind of thing.
And a huge amount of them tends to be triggered by bad drug experiences. It tends to be bad acid experiences, bad weed experiences. Um, I mean, drugs across the board, but tend to be the more psychedelic ones that tend to have visual aspects of them, or at least that's what people kind of focus on as being the trigger. Um, but that's DPDR. I mean, that's like drug induced DPDR is probably the most common that I'm encountering with people to speak to, certainly over the years, and especially as weed has become more legally available around the world, and then like people are smoking weapons grade weed at very young ages, and then that triggers the condition. But it's so interesting. It's almost like, because I think I wonder when what happened to me, that if I had come across the explanation of VSS first, I mean, I know I would have been like, that's the thing, that's it. Because I had gone to an optometrist trying to figure out what was wrong with my eyesight. And also I thought that my eyesight may have been causing everything else that was wrong with me.
Yeah.
So if I had found an explanation like VSS, I would have latched onto that as being like, this is 100% what I have.
Yeah.
But and then you see other people saying, "Oh, this is incurable," and then you're in a hole for weeks, like trying to. Yeah, it's wild. It's wild how the information that we encounter on these things determines the path that we follow, or how long we have to struggle with it. You know.
Exactly. And you can really go down the wrong rabbit hole with this, like especially reading comments like on the VSS community. It's just like I'm hopeless, and like I think they even have it in their description. Like VSS is an incurable condition. Like that's actually in their description. Like we don't know the answers to it yet. We haven't figured it out. There's ongoing scientific research about it. And of course, like when I read that, I was like, what the hell? What the hell? It's just. I just know it's wrong in my opinion. Of course, there's biological mechanisms happening. It's like it's not happening in the spirit realm. Like of course, like DPDR and visual snow, there is something happening in the visual cortex. There is something like um happening in the brain. I have a hunch as to what that is, but it doesn't matter actually. It really doesn't matter because it will take care of itself if you leave it alone. If you leave it alone.
Yeah, yeah. And certainly there are physiological things happening. I mean, for example, your pupils are when you're in fight or flight, or even just a high anxiety, your pupils are dilated. Your visual cortex is on the lookout for attacks. So your awareness of your peripheral vision becomes heightened. As you were saying, David, like when you like you're stepping outside, going for a walk in the countryside, like felt really overwhelming. Same for me. I was down in Kerry and just like going for walks outside, and like the sky felt too big, like, and I felt like I was in danger. And then the issue with that, well, not the issue with it, like, but the contradiction of that is that you're perfectly safe and you know that. So then logically you're trying to connect those things and wondering why you're feeling terrified, why you know you're in a perfectly safe space. But it is that thing of like, floaters and tracers as well. I used to, yeah, all the time. I would see those, and that terrified me because I thought I'm after damaging my vision. I'll never be able to like drive a car again, looking up at the sky, And what you realize as you recover is that like floaters and tracers are normal parts of the human visual field. They're absolutely normal. It's just that most people don't notice them because they're too busy watching Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah, yeah,
You're just too busy driving the car. You're too busy watching the movie to notice it. And that's such a core aspect of so much of the anxiety DPDR stuff, is that like we interpret these normal things through the filter of anxiety. Even and I just want to ask you more about that as well, David, the experience of tinnitus or tinnitus, because that was an issue for me as well, and I became convinced that I had damaged my ears, and I was a musician at the time, so I was like, and I'd always been very careful, but I thought like I've damaged my ears somehow. Convinced of it, like absolutely, and hearing like noises and like hums and things. And then what I realized when I recovered anyway was that like if I'm sitting in silence, you're going to hear something.
Well, yeah.
But when the anxiety reduced and faded away, my hyper awareness of my visual field and my audio field just drifted away, and I was too busy listening to Top Gun Maverick, listening to Kenny Loggins, like
Exactly.
yeah,
That's literally it. That's it's hyper fixation. Um, again, and again, the hyper fixation just stresses you out so much. Even with the thoughts, and of course, the more you get stressed out, guess what's going to happen? It's going to get worse. So it's all. You've said it 100 times before. It's all a loop. It's all this kind of self-fulfilling loop, really. Yeah.
yeah, it is. It's nice. And so David, I know we've gone off on a bit of a tangent there, but it was really absolutely fascinating. Can I just bring you back to when this first started? So did you? So you were teaching at the time. Did you have to go straight back into teaching, or what was that like for you?
So it was during the summer holidays. Actually, I was correcting junior cycle exam papers. Um, and I had to stop. I had to just like ring in, call in sick. I couldn't do this anymore. I was actually trying to focus on correcting exam papers. I just could not do it. Just could not do it. It was just impossible. And so yeah, and then I was thinking, okay, now I have like 4 weeks before I start school, and I'll really just put this to the side. I'll relax, and I'll do this and I'll do that. And of course, it didn't go away, and I went straight into school with it. Really, yeah. So I was correcting exam papers at the time.
What was it like going into? I mean, for me, I was a musician at the time, and I at least had the ability to cancel the gigs that I had lined up. It sucked, like, and I lost all my income, but I was able. But I moved home with my parents to just focus on recovery,
Yeah.
which was both a good and a bad thing in retrospect because it gave me more space to research it. But what was it like going into school and teaching? Did it kind of take your mind off of it, or was it how was
Uh,
that?
so I was convinced that like I was making plans in my head, like I'm gonna have to go on sick leave. I was making up plans. Okay, so I'll have to go to the doctor then. I'll have to get a sick note. I'll have to tell them about this. I'll have to. I was like, because there's no way that I'm going to actually be able to do this. And I did it. I didn't have one sick day throughout the year. Some days were really tough, where I was very anxious. Again, the waves would come and go.
Mm.
But actually, I always found when I was up in the middle of the class teaching that I was actually okay. I was actually kind of fine. Um, when I was, and just really just the kids and was very grounding, and kids were very grounding, and just being so busy. Actually, I would think it was the best thing for me. If I had called in sick and taken a 6 months absent or something, I think that would have been the worst possible thing I could have done. And my friend from America told me that. He's like, no, going back to school is going to be the best thing you've done. Even if you're scared, even if you're still having all these things, going to school is the best thing you can do right now. And that social interaction, social engagement, yeah, I think was key to my recovery. Actually, was just the kids and even the busyness and all of that. I think it was key.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, and yeah, it's something that we do so much that we say to ourselves, I need to create the space for my recovery. So we almost think of it like, if you get a bad flu or something, so you think, okay, well that's me done for 2 or 3 days. So what I'll do is I'll square myself away in my room,
No,
watch some some true crime on Netflix, read a book, take paracetamol, I'll be grand. But I have to wait it out. I can't work. I can't do anything else. And we think of anxiety in the same way, that like I need to square myself away until I'm ready to get back. But what we do inadvertently is we clear all the space that anxiety goes woof into and takes up.
no. The worst thing you can do is, and those people that are on Reddit, like are like, I've been in it for 10 years. It's like a lot of them have developed agoraphobia. They will not leave the house. They will not socially engage. They will not do their hobbies anymore. And that is a big reason why they're still in it. Is that they've just done the wrong thing through no fault of their own, through lack of support and listening to the right people. But like, oh God, I'm just so thankful that I actually went back to school. Because just staying at home and isolating and staying in bed, I would still be in it today. I would guarantee you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating. And we make the decisions we make with the information that we have. But as you say, like, I mean, I don't even think Reddit was around when I had it. Certainly there wasn't a DPDR Reddit if it did exist, because there was only one forum at the time, one website forum. But I mean, the Reddit forum is quite dispiriting to see. But that's the nature of it as well. And and I was that person. I was that person for 2 years. Um, because inevitably, like, the comment sections, they turn into comparing and contrasting, and they turn into, like, I mean, this, it's wild. Like, you'll see people who recover. So someone would say, I've had this for 4 years, and I've completely recovered. And then the responses would be like, ah, yeah, but you didn't have it that badly, did you?
Yeah.
You didn't have, you didn't really have a trauma to set it off. Like, mine's different. Or someone will reply and say, like, 4 years, try 15 years. And it just becomes that kind of like a competition thing, which is, and again, I understand, because I did that for a long time, but you cannot, it is the opposite of what you should be giving anxiety. It is getting into, like, it's thinking of, like, anxiety as like fantasy football, as opposed to, like, being done with it. You have to be done with this in order for it to be done with you. You can't be logging into a forum each day and comparing, contrasting your symptoms. Um, but and when we just stay working, when we just keep our lives going, as difficult as it seems, that helps to keep that habit going. Because when we have a lot of free space, we tend to get into, as you were saying earlier, David, like the rabbit holes and the forums and such. Um, were you seeing any doctors or therapists at that time, David?
No, I didn't go to, I didn't go to any doctor. I did go to therapy and my coherence therapy, and we actually got through a lot of trauma. Like, I have trauma in the past, which helped to some degree, but it definitely didn't permanently remove it. Which, it was helpful in some way, but it didn't fix it. That's for sure. So yeah, it's nice to always to have that support, of course. But if I was to go back, I would probably go to um a therapist that focused or has lived this actual experience, or something along those lines. Kind of again, that sensory motor OCD or MCT approach. But in terms of like doctors, psychiatrists, or anything, um, no, didn't do it at all for some reason.
Mm. Well, you were trying to find explanations for this as well, David. Like, did you at any point connect it to the trauma in your past as maybe a reason for it, or or did you think of the DPDR as being something completely separate?
I really felt this was something separate. I feel like, here's how I explain it: the the anxiety and the DPDR. It's almost like it's let's say you have like there's this bad way to describe it. You have like a plastic swimming pool that has holes in it, and it's empty, right? And those holes are like all your traumas. And the DPDR is like the water that goes into the pool, and it's going to go straight towards those holes, to your worst fears, to your worst kind of um existential worries and whatnot. So I found that the anxieties were still moving towards those holes, like because certain fears I was having were very specific to me, and rather than other people. And I think depending on what your intrusive thought is going to be depending a lot on what has happened in your past, of course. So definitely with me, like, about safety and like catastrophic things happening. Like, I lost my mother when I was very young, very suddenly. So when I was 8, so that was a very sudden catastrophic thing that happened. And then constantly, my anxiety and DPDR was something catastrophic is about to happen. Something like it was very much similar in some ways, but I think even without that trauma, it would still be it would still be active for sure. But I'm sure it plays some role. And really, I think the cause for everybody is different. For one person, actually, we have case examples from coherence therapy. I was just reading the coherence therapy book. I was reading a case example from like 2005 of a girl coming in, and her hands were growing and shrinking, like her limbs felt bigger and everything was like 2D and flat. And I was like, oh, that's DPDR. And actually, her cause was very, very specific, specific to trauma, very situational based, and it was dispelled through coherence therapy. So there's some cases like that, and then there's other cases that are drug induced, for example, and then there's other ones that are like there's post viral mental health issues that we are well documented. Like COVID as well and like post viral mental health problems can trigger it. Um, there's theories now of toxoplasmosis, which is the most common parasite in the world. Like 70% of the human population have it. But we now know it's probably contributing in some form. The evidence isn't quite clear yet to things like schizophrenia and OCD and these things like that. So the causes are just like so various, and there's so many potential um triggers for it. But I think this solution is mostly the same.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think there can often be a strong temptation to, or a tendency to connect a trauma to the experience because it feels like it makes more sense
Yeah.
in that way. There's a thing I talk about in the book called proportionality bias. And it's the tendency that we have as human beings to want to ascribe big explanations onto what feel like big experiences.
Yeah.
It's actually one of the core things behind, like, conspiracy theories, for example, is just that we want a big explanation for, even though if something was quite random and quite, it doesn't need a big explanation. We tend to put one on it anyways. But, but for me, when I was going through DPDR, because it felt like the end of the world, it felt like I had just somehow crossed into a different dimension. I destroyed my brain with drugs. I had meddled with powers I couldn't possibly comprehend, etc., etc. So then the idea that like that had been caused by like a bad weed experience or like a panic attack, it didn't make sense to me. I was like, no, like I know people have had panic attacks. Like this isn't it. Like also anxiety doesn't affect my vision. Anxiety doesn't make me see visual snow. Like that's not what this is. That can't be what this is. And at one point I started to think like, do I have like traumas in my past that I don't remember? Like, but like there has to be a bigger explanation for this. And it took me a long time to kind of understand or just to accept that like what I'm experiencing is these are symptoms of anxiety. And that's absolutely not to minimize like if someone has trauma in their past, but that you don't necessarily need to unpack a trauma in order to deal with symptoms of anxiety now. So that like the feelings of DPDR, as we were saying earlier, as compelling and as huge as they can seem, this is the mental equivalent of shoulder tension. Like it is the mental equivalent of dilated pupils, of heart palpitations. And if you're experiencing, let's say, heart palpitations, you don't necessarily need to unpack a trauma in your past in order to deal with heart palpitations now. Now, that's not to say that dealing with the trauma and unpacking it wouldn't be an incredibly beneficial thing to do. It absolutely would. But I think that we have a tendency to overcomplicate the immediacy of the symptoms by creating connections between all these things because we want it. It feels like it makes more sense to have a narrative scaffolding around it. And it takes a while to take that scaffolding away and just say, no, these are the symptoms of anxiety. All things being equal, the simplest explanation is the most likely. And I don't think you have to, or I don't think it is necessary to complicate it further than that, in my experience anyways.
Yeah, I think sometimes it might actually be harmful to try to profoundly deep trauma work, when you're in such a deregulated state. Because in order to do effective trauma work, you have to be in a stable, safe mode of being anyway. First, there's just no way you're going to do effective trauma work if you're in session and you're not, and you're in the middle of DPDR. So I think that the like again, I'm not saying everyone is like this, but I think for most people, it's good to take that MCT metacognitive approach, that OCD approach, the sensory motor OCD approach in with the actual symptoms first, to get to a place where we're at now, recovered and feeling safe. And then if you want to like look at your trauma when you're in a safer place, then you can do that, for sure. But I think, yeah, the best approach for me was not healing my trauma in the past. It was all the stuff that we've already talked about.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really glad I didn't come across anything that would have like told me to go and look at some unexamined trauma back then, because I would have done that. Like I would have, I mean, for me, I was like thinking, I mean, I was kind of bullied a bit as a teenager. Maybe that was it, but I knew in my heart, like, I mean, I didn't get bullied more than anybody else. Like, I mean, it certainly wasn't that, like, but I mean, an example I like to give is like, I mean, I thought that I had like damaged my brain with drugs, and I thought that I had done something terrible. I thought I was being punished by the universe as well at one point. And when I came across the explanation that this is just anxiety, the idea that I was being punished by the universe made more sense to me, because that was more commensurate with the scale of what I felt I was experiencing. And if I had been told that, like, well, you have to go and unpack, there is some trauma there, you have to go and unpack it, I would have been all over it, like, and it's exactly what I wouldn't have needed at the time. Yeah, again, it's all down to the information that we encounter, and why it's so important to kind of to have parameters on it, and why it's so great that like people like yourself and your friends are, have this awareness of it going into therapy. Something I wanted to ask you is about as well, David, is the as someone who has experience with meditation and deep meditation, as you mentioned, something that people often interpret the experience of DPDR as is like an inverted awakening, or like an enlightenment that you didn't want to happen. And people often just talk about like Eckhart Tolle and his experience, and is quite often interpreted as that. It's something that I thought had happened to me at one point as well. I thought like, oh, I've gone into the I've skipped I didn't pass go. I skipped all of the steps, and I suddenly like I fell over into like a state of enlightenment, but I don't have the training and the mental strength to be able to handle it. So what the hell do I do? And again, that explanation felt like it made sense to me. But for you, as someone who actually gone into that stuff, how did you interpret it, or did you interpret it like that?
Yeah, I thought I was going through a stage, because the people I was listening to and training to, it was a particularly radical form of Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, radical Mahayana Buddhism. And of course, the goal of Buddhism is to see that there is no self. That is the goal of Buddhism. And there's no self. There's no world. There's only there's a dependently originated world. But the self is an illusion, and all of this, and you have to discover that's true, and that's the case. But yeah, the people I was listening to were particularly radical, and a lot of them would have said, "Oh yeah, no, that's it. You have no sense of self, and like the world feels like a dream, and like all of that. Like that's the goal. That's that you're close now. You're getting there." And a lot of spiritual people would say that, and I actually know a lot of spiritual people who actually live in that state. I'm very critical of these people right now. I have these Buddhist tattoos all over me as well, but I'm very critical of that form of Buddhism now. But I'm also very lucky to have found Dr. Willoughby Britton. So Dr. Willoughby Britton is a clinical psychologist, and she's been studying the adverse effects of meditation for over 25 years now. And she has an organization called Cheetah House, for meditators in distress, because people don't realize this actually, that meditation, especially the kind of radical forms that I'm talking about, um, have a lot of potential side effects. 1 in 10 meditators actually have adverse side effects. Um, so, and especially the deeper you go into it. And like she has Buddhist monks coming in who are like severely dissociated and like you're going through like all kinds of depersonalization, anxiety, and panic attacks. So it's actually very, 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 very common, way more common than you think. But I direct people to Dr. Willoughby Written's studies and her lecture. She has a whole lecture series on dissociation. But there's two ways she says you can enter into dissociation, into DPDR, where like, the 2D vision, no sense of self. The first way is anxiety, which is what we've been talking about, which is it's trauma or whatever cause it is, which is like, the intrusive thoughts and like not feeling real and all of that. She has a big graph that shows this, but you can enter into it through that when anxiety levels get too high. Literally the mind will downregulate the amygdala, your emotional part of the brain, and increase other areas. And of course, our emotional reasoning plays a huge part in how we understand the world. So if you downregulate that, the world is going to look really, really funny and really weird. She's very interesting how she explains it. But she says there's a second way you can enter into dissociation that people don't realize, and that's through deep, deep meditation. You can put yourself into expansive, no self. The world becomes 2D and flat just by like, because that's what it felt like to me. That DPDR spacey, open, like I feel not grounded. That's you can very easily enter into that if you meditate for long enough. You can actually put yourself in there without the anxiety, and you can just drop yourself in there, and that's what ketamine does as well, right? That's ketamine is a dissociative anesthetic. You can dissociate, same kind of feelings, and so there's two ways you can enter into it. But I think that the people we talk to are all the people is the anxiety based. It's very rare to come across somebody who has actually wants to enter into it and like loves staying there. But because I was talking to so many of these people and I was around so many of these people and they all YouTube channels and um, they freak me out now when I think about them. I just thought like, I'm so very critical of them. But they would describe their experience as like being like that 24/7 and they love it. And like, yeah, that's it. Like you're close on the spiritual path. And where we've written is like, no, this is dissociation in disguise, guys. And so I was so scared like that. Oh my God. Because one of their claims is once you're on this path, once you're here, you can't go back, you can't reverse it, you can't like, and I was getting those messages and I was so terrified. I was like, I can't reverse this, I can't go back. And so people like in the Reddit section, all the people watching, it's like, you think you had it bad? Like, oh no, my symptoms are different. I was literally in a spiritual community who said, and I was constantly being reinforced that I couldn't get out of this and that this was the goal. And I was convinced that was such. Um, but I just proved all of them wrong. I came right back from it, and kind of just deconditioned my mind away from all of that kind of thinking. And yeah, that was one of the most terrifying intrusive thoughts that I have was I can't get out of this, that I'm reaching enlightenment and I'm never going to come back. And none of it was true. So that's a very interesting. I'm not sure you've heard that before, but if you're interested, tech, her stuff is really interesting. Dr. Willoughby Written, again, it's Cheetah House. But yeah, it makes sense. Like it's like meditating for that long, and like you're really like you're shutting off referential thought and imagination, and you're imagining yourself in the future and in the past, which is like narrative self, and you're just shutting it all down, 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 and quieting the mind way. You're shutting all these systems down, and that essentially is dissociative. But doing it for like mindfulness is perfectly healthy. But like again, goes back to everything is good in proportion, right? Too much of anything is a bad thing, and I think it really just goes back to that.
That's fascinating. That's absolutely fascinating. And how interesting as well. We talk about like, or as I was mentioning about the idea of like putting narrative structures on the experience to try and make sense of it. And I mean, yeah, for me, I had this thoughts of what if I died, or what if I'm in a dream and I can't wake up. But there was nobody reinforcing that. Like, I did have people like going, oh yeah, no, that's it. Like, or or even and I again had the worry that I had like I had reached a sort of like inverted enlightenment, but I had nobody telling me like, oh yeah, that's actually what's happening, or that you can't reverse it. Just to build on that topic as well, David. Um, so I work with a lot of people who have developed DPDR because of, or it's been triggered by drug use, bad drug experience typically. I also work with a lot of people who have developed DPDR who have never touched drugs in their lives. They might even be drinkers, but they've had a panic attack. They've had, a stressful couple of weeks at work. They're not sleeping properly or whatever, and they drink too much coffee some morning and they have a panic attack at a work presentation. And just as an example. But what's really interesting is that the people who have developed it because of a bad drug experience almost invariably say, I wish I had the type of DPDR that wasn't triggered by drugs, because at least then I would know that I hadn't put something into my body to have caused this, and I wouldn't blame myself, and I wouldn't have that sense of shame about it. And then the people who have developed it just through a panic attack, no drugs associated with it, almost invariably say, I wish I had the kind of DPDR that was triggered by drugs, because at least then I could point to something. Because for me, this just happened to me, and I'm supposed to go through the rest of my life now just at the mercy of this thing. If this had been triggered by acid, like a bad LSD experience, like at least I could just avoid LSD. But it's so interesting. Like the grass is always greener, but it's like we take the circumstances that have surrounded this, and we pull everything around us into this narrative to make sense of it, and then we catastrophize that we have the worst version of it. For me as well, like I was fairly heavily into like kind of drug literature and stuff at the time as well. So I was reading a lot of like Robert Anton Wilson, Terence McKenna, Grant Morrison, Aleister Crowley, that kind of stuff, So I was surrounded by this stuff, and don't get me wrong, no, I was just, when I was, taking drugs, like I wasn't, I was doing it carefully. Like I was aware of set and setting and like the Tim Leary stuff and all the rest of it. But when I developed the condition, like all of that stuff I was reading was just coming at me like that, because it was like, you've opened this door into this dimension and now you can't close it, and you're stuck with this, and you're going to be a drug casualty at best. Like welcome, forget about making films. You're going to be warning children about the dangers of drug use for the rest of your life, if you're lucky, and it's your fault. And then interestingly, like I'd have conversations with friends who would have had like brutal experiences on acid or even weed or something, and the next day they're just like, what are you gonna do? Back on the horse. And it's like it's so much of this is how you interpret it. And if you've been surrounding yourself with like literature that kind of feeds into the mythos of psychedelia, you will feel that this is a massive thing that has happened to you. Whereas if you could just kind of think like, well, it's a drug and it was in my system and now it's out of my system, and that was scary, but sure, I have stuff to do. That gives you the permission to let it go. So again, in that context, David, it's so interesting to hear what you went through, where there was a whole culture around you that was identifying this correctly or incorrectly, and then telling you that there's no backing out of it.
That's why I say it's like but I'm gonna say, guys, everyone listening, but I had the worst version. I mean, that is the worst version. When especially that's teachers who you trust and look up to, like these guys know, these guys have the authority, and if they're telling you, like, yep, okay, your vision is 2D and flat. Yep, that's it. Mine too. You have no sense of agency and self. Yep, that's you're getting very close now. And you do just like, oh my God, it's like I don't want this. I do not want this. And then I was just so convinced. I'm so lucky I had my friend, um, because he was into meditation as well, and he was telling me when I was still in the meditation, that kind of radical form of meditation. He was like, bro, it's like you need to get out of this. It's like this is all bullshit. It's like this is like not I'm not saying all Buddhism is bullshit or like all meditation. That's not what I'm saying. But the specific form that I was in, it's like you need to get out of that. It's like I was there. This happened to me. Um, you're not going through a spiritual awakening. Look up Dr. Wilby Written. You're going through DPDR. I'm so thankful I had him to just pull me right out. And then Dr. Wilby Written, like clinical psychologist, studying this for 25 years, one of the smartest people I've ever spoken to. Like having her then was like, no, this is dissociation and you can come out of it. This I've seen this many, many times before. But like, yeah, your mind will latch on to like the worst possible thing. And just, yeah, as you said, it'll just run with it. So it's the same. It's just the same thing. And it's just funny is that we all go through the very same kind of symptoms, isn't it?
This is the thing as well, is that like the symptoms are actually quite static. Like the symptoms, and it's so interesting because people are like, well, the visual symptoms, oh, I've got visual snow syndrome. I have this type of existential thought that I don't think anyone else has had before. I have a combination of symptoms that I haven't seen anyone else report.
Yeah.
And it's like catastrophizing, and I did this, but when you look at this from a non-anxious perspective, it's like you're describing, there's a laundry list of symptoms and you're ticking boxes. And it's something I say to people all the time on the Zoom coaching sessions I do with people, because they will list out the symptoms and they'll say, have you ever heard of this before? I'm like, this is, that for someone just saying something like, for example, people would say like, I'd have the strong worry that like I'm stuck in a simulation. Have you ever heard of that before? And I'm like, that to me is like somebody with hay fever describing sneezing.
Yeah.
It's so baffling and destabilizing when it happens first. But once you understand it and you understand why it's happening, and physiologically and mentally why it's happening, why this is, not only is this not going to hurt you, this is literally a defensive mechanism. And again, you take all that narrative scaffolding off it. It's not enlightenment. It's not, Aleister Crowley. It's not the universe testing you. And with the great, and I say to people is like, you're not that special, and I mean that in a loving way. Like you're not that special. This isn't the universe testing you. It's anxiety. It's just anxiety. And when we put that label on it, it starts to become a lot easier. So David, will you tell us a bit more about just how your recovery started? Like what did it feel like for those changes to happen and for the symptoms to start to fade?
Yeah, it's very much like, again, like everyone says, it's so unnoticeable. As I watched all your interviews before, I was like, okay, it's going to be unnoticeable. Okay, so now I'm going to like try and try
to not notice them.
I'll be able to notice it happening, but like, oh, it's so difficult. Like there was very like gradual, like it's just like up and then you go down and then you go backwards and then you go up and then you go down and you go backwards and then you go backwards more and then you go up and you're like, okay, I'm finally there, but then you drop again, you go way back and you go up again, and it's just like, oh my God. But there was a few noticeable periods where I was like, oh, that was actually a noticeable jump. First, okay. Well, first of all, within the worst and the worst of it, like where I was like no sense of self, completely no sense of having a body. No, I didn't feel anything. It was all of like that complete like nihilistic no sense of self at all. That only lasted for about 2 months. And then once that kind of 2 months was over, then it was just like less, but like wave, like much more wave like nature, much more anxiety, much more kind of OCD kind of things, rather than like more like absolutely no sense of self at all. Um, and it just, yeah, the waves just huge at the start, and then just over time, just gradually got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. I particularly remember, I think it was this like 3 months ago, I went to Budapest. I still kind of had it, and I remember waking up and my vision wasn't like that bright anymore, and I was like, but it was very noticeable. And then the bright vision never came back, so it's almost like that symptom kind of just fell away. And then I remember driving in the car one day, and I hadn't been thinking intrusive thoughts anymore, and I didn't even notice that I wasn't. And just these symptoms just slowly just started to like just fall into the background, one by one, um, and then like yeah, towards the end, I would most of my day would be fine, and then I would get like a wave, but then I'd reached a point where I'm like, I don't really care, and I was actually kind of reached the point where I was like, oh, fascinated. Okay, what's this? Okay. I'm feeling unreal. I'm not moving my arms, and I'm feeling kind of anxious and worried. But it like every time, and like 1 hour later, I was just back to normal. And then once every 3 days, I would have one of them, and once every 4 days, I would have one of them. And then I'd go backwards, and I would have like a day where I was feeling a little bit okay, and then I'd have a week, and then it just like it just then you just don't even notice. It's just like goes away.
The waves thing is such a good description of it. It's remembering that anxiety is a spectrum, and that it is waves. It is ups and downs. So as we were saying earlier, getting out of the mindset of expecting a switch to happen as something that's going to turn this off, and instead understanding that the waves are there. You can't turn the waves off in the same way that you can't turn any habit off. You can't turn off your urge to smoke, but you can train yourself away from it. So what happens over time is that the waves are still there, but the amplitude of them or the size of them gets smaller and smaller over time.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you can expect that, that's like the best tool that you can have on the road to recovery, because what invariably happens at the start of recovery, or what happened to me anyway, is that like I'd have like 2 or 3 good days and I'd be like, shit, like it's working. It's actually working. Like I'm actually going to recover. And then day 4, for some reason, you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh my God, it's back. It's back. And also I'm a fool for expecting that I could recover, and I'm back to square one, and I'm goosed with this, like, and what do I do, And then getting depressed and sad about it. No, you're not back to square one. You couldn't get back to square one if you wanted to. These are the normal ups and downs that happen with recovery from any anxiety-based condition or changing any habit. And the thing is, again, once you have the information to understand and expect that, you give yourself the leniency and the compassion just to allow yourself to have those days, so that if I wake up on day 4 and I'm feeling more DP than I had for the last 3 days, I don't then start like flagellating myself for, how stupid were you? And, you shouldn't have smoked that joint in the first, it's like, no. This is what happens. This is not an obstacle to recovery. This is a part of recovery. And you're training yourself away from reacting to it. So when the days happen, when you are experiencing anxiety, you go about your day and you don't get frustrated and beat yourself up. And then on the days when the anxiety is not there, you don't celebrate it, and you don't, start throwing parties. Like, you're just like, okay, that's, if it's there, it's there. If it's not there, it's not there. It makes no difference to me. You're training yourself to be indifferent to it. You're not trying to defeat it. You're not trying to switch it off. You're training yourself away from focusing on it and interacting with it at all. That's a very good description of it, the waves. Was there a time, David? Was there any moment? I know you said it was a gradual falling away. Was there any moment where you kind of said to yourself, like, it's gone? Or did that even happen?
I think more recently, being in Prague, when life was getting really good, and It just feels damn good. Um, just like socializing with friends, going to raves, and raving actually I think really helped as well, because in raves you go and just lose yourself in the music and you forget about everything, and um there's so much people around you and you're just dancing and there's music, it's really loud. You would think like that would cause anxiety, like all these people and all these lights and all these things, but no, it was just like so therapeutic. And I just, there's been a few times like just like where it was like, oh, this just, yeah, a lot of people say it's just a far deeper appreciation for life, and um, far deeper appreciation actually for life, and a far deeper sense of compassion for people with mental health problems, which again is very common. Um, but yeah, that's been more a recent thing. It's just this appreciation. Kind of right now, I'm in Prague and I'm 26. I'm young, and I really feel like I am now living my best life. And it just feels really, really great, really, really fantastic. So I'd say yeah, that's definitely a more recent thing.
Mm, that's so good to hear, and I'm so happy for you. So one or two questions quickly. This people I always like to ask on the channel, because they're always asked of me. Now that you've recovered from depersonalization, derealization, and a very intense bout of it, that is getting back to normal, really getting back to normal.
Oh, it's it's so funny. It was for me actually. It's no, it's not. It's wrong because it went better than normal. So yeah, I'll disagree with you actually. It is out that question. It was better than normal for me. It was better than normal. So much more of an appreciation for life. So much more compassion for people who have mental health problems. Um, and yeah, I'm very, 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 very happy where I am. So better.
Better, yeah, awesome. Um, and there's going to be people watching this interview, David, who may be going through something similar to what you went through. Um, what advice would you have for anybody watching this video? What advice would you have for yourself back when this first happened, if you could chat yourself down?
Yeah, so there's so much, but to say just first of all to know that you're safe, even though you feel like you're not safe. It feels like the world is disjointed, that there are existential threats everywhere, that reality is falling apart. I have lived every single symptom: 2D vision, visual snow, intrusive thoughts, ocular migraines. I have sudden bouts of dizziness, not feeling like I was real, no free will, like every possible symptom to its maximum worst. And even in that, you're safe. You're completely safe. Um, this will pass. There's that famous saying, this too will pass. Even though it feels like it will not pass, this too will pass. Um, and you really have to have a trust that when that next wave comes, next time it comes, I want you to say to yourself, I was expecting that. And I want you to watch what happens, watch that it will pass, it will fade, it will go down, and it'll come back. That's what I'm just going to say. It's going to come back, but next time you're going to expect it. And you're not going to try solve it. You're not going to try figure it out. You're not going to try research it on Reddit. You're just going to say, here it is again. This feels horrible. I feel like I don't exist. I'm going to be trapped in this forever. That's all expected. It's all expected now. So expect it, and ride those waves. That's it. Ride those waves. As difficult and as impossible as it seems, just ride them. And yeah, everything is going to be better. I promise. Even though I know they don't believe me.
Yeah, 100%. Once you recover, you have the tools to live a better life. Because after you have the intimate familiarity with anxiety, it's never the same again. It's never as frightening as it was before, and you can manage it, because the only reason it's turned into an issue in the first place was because of a misunderstanding of what it was and catastrophic interpretations, as we've been saying, of what this was. But now you're through that, you prevent that feedback loop from ever starting up again. And you take that compassion of speaking to other people, a better understanding of, the difficulty of mental health issues. And that also is invaluable for just communication and being with people. It's really, really wonderful. Before we finish up, David, so you have your own YouTube channel? What kind of stuff do you post about this
So
sort of thing?
it used to be solely dedicated to the meditation and the kind of the Mahayana Buddhism, but I've actually deleted most of my content. But I still did have various videos where I focused on like coherence therapy and internal family systems therapy. So mainly now I'm moving towards I've lost a lot of my subscribers and I don't really get my views anymore because I did a complete 180 on my audience, which is like a bad idea to do. But now I'm focusing on just coherence therapy and um yeah, just talking about that. I'm talking about my experience in training with it, and yeah, I have a small TikTok as well. Same name under the same name, and we're yeah, just mostly about the coherence therapy. That's it really.
Great stuff. Well, listen, we'll link to both of those, your YouTube channel and your TikTok channel, in the video description for anyone watching. So go and follow David on those platforms. Um, I have enjoyed speaking to you so much, David. This was so fascinating. I was going to say enlightening, but probably not.
Bad choice of word. It looks like the Joker in Batman. It's like poor choice of words.
Yeah. But this has been so interesting, David, and yeah, and I'm absolutely fascinated to see what your future work in therapy is like. Maybe we could even have you back on the channel at some point in the future. And yeah, so much stuff that you referenced, the Will Be Britain stuff and all the rest of it, that's new to me, and I'm absolutely going to go and check it out. I know there's a lot of people on the channel will too. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your story and being just for so candid and honest about the whole thing. I know it's going to be very, very helpful and inspirational to people going through something similar. And it was great to meet you, man. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem, Sean. Again, thank you, and like I can't thank you enough because like those I tell you, I watched every single one of those interviews, and they gave me so much hope. And you're one of the first channels I came across right after my friend mentioned DPDR, and it was just such a relief. So, like, oh yeah, I just can't right back at you. I can't thank you enough.
That's great. I'm so thrilled that the material was helpful. Okay, listen, we'll chat again in the future, but for now, thanks so much, David, and yeah, have a good one.
Bye bye.